Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. My name is Rob Dauster. I have Jeff Goodman with me today, and we are going to be breaking down one of the, if not the preseason number one team in all of college basketball next season. That is the Kansas Jayhawks. Jeff, they
My
brought back.
preseason number one. My preseason number one.
There
Not
you go.
yours, mine.
There you go. They brought back Hunter Dickinson for his 37th year of college basketball. They brought back DeJuan Harris for his 28th season of college basketball. KJ Adams is back as well. And of course, Bill Self will still be coaching the program. But the big change that they made this offseason was going out and hitting the portal hard and hitting it early. They brought in Zeke Mayo. They brought in Rylan Griffin. They brought in AJ Storr specifically, while also going out and getting Shaquille Moore once it became clear that Elmarco Jackson's knee injury was going to be something that would hold him out for the entire season. Zach Clements is back. Flory Badinga, who might be your favorite player in all of college basketball next season, is joining the program. Marquise Passmore is joining the program. There are pieces here. There are shooters here, and you have the core of DeJuan Harris, KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson back. There is a lot to like with this Kansas team.
A lot to like, Rob. A lot to like because, as you mentioned, they have three veterans now who have all been in the program, right? I mean, Hunter Dickinson a year ago was new to the program, transferring in. He's got a year under his belt. I talked to him recently, and he said like he feels much more comfortable. You know, DeJuan Harris won't have to do as much offensively this year because they added firepower in the form of AJ Storr, in the form of, like you said, Rylan Griffin, Zeke Mayo, two shooters, a scorer in Storr, a guy who can create for himself, and then two shooters. Last year, they put all their eggs in one basket. Nick Timberlake. I mean, they really did, and he couldn't make a shot. Now they were smart. They were like, all right, we're gonna take two proven dudes, one at the high major level in Griffin at Alabama, who's a piece of a team that went to the Final Four, another who was arguably the best player in the Summit, and Zeke Mayo, who's from Lawrence, Kansas, who again, they need one of them to step forward and be a dude and be a 40% three-point shooter. The other one can be a 33, 35% three-point shooter coming off the bench, and that's fine. And AJ Storr fits a huge need. Like, what they did was what they didn't do a year ago, which was address the major concerns, which were really shot creation and perimeter shooting.
Yeah, the perimeter shooting was the big problem, right? And they thought that they did address it last year. Getting Johnny Furphy and getting Nick Timberlake in was what they expected the answer to be. And I'm sure that if Self got you, if you got him in a moment of honesty, he would tell you he expected to get more out of someone like an Marco Jackson and maybe out of Jamari McDowell. But last year we talked about it all season long, right? It was basically a four-person team. You had DeJuan Harris, you had Kevin McCullough, you had KJ Adams, you had Hunter Dickinson, four studs. Three of them are elite defenders, right? You didn't have that four spot, and you didn't have the not the four spot. You didn't have the two spot, and you didn't have depth. And what happened was you saw Hunter get banged up a little bit heading into the tournament. Kevin McCullough was dealing with injuries throughout the season, and once you reach the point of March, you turn a four-man team turned into a two-man team because Johnny Furphy got found out a little bit. So uh, I do think that they did try to address it. My biggest question, Jeff, and I'm gonna, to be clear, I have Kansas as the preseason 1B team in America, right? Like I think that they are very, 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 very good. So I'm going to approach this from the angle of like, okay, why aren't they the consensus number one? If that makes sense, right? So if it sounds like I'm being negative, like this, it's when you're talking about the best teams in America, you don't talk about the positive angles. We know the positive angles. We talk about why, what could be the thing that trips them up here. And to me, it's I kind of look at this roster and I think that you might run into the same kind of problem that you had last year. And what I mean by that is how much floor spacing are you really getting when you add AJ Storr, who shot 32% from three last year, to a team? No, think about it. Like KJ Adams isn't spacing the floor. Hunter Dickinson can make shots, but if he's your best or second best shooter, is that
But
necessarily
he's
ideal?
not anymore. He's not.
Hold on, let me.
What-
The interrupter strikes again.
How many drinks
Dewan
did you have
Harris.
today? How
Dewan
many drinks?
Harris. Dewan Harris is not the greatest shooter. So basically, like you have one shooter on the floor if AJ Storr ends up being the guy that he was last year. And I don't know if that necessarily creates more space. I don't know if that changes things drastically. And the other question I have is how much more depth is there? Like where last year, the thing that you ran into was you they did the freshmen did not come in ready to contribute at the level that we necessarily expected, right? We've already know that Elmarco Jackson isn't going to be back. Shaquille Moore is probably going to be good depth. I'll give you that. And Floyd Badinga, I would bet on that being good depth. But you're also making a little bit of a bet there. So I feel like I am not as convinced as some other people like you are that this is 100% a surefire. They've added everything that they need for when it comes to shooting, and they've added everything that they need when it comes to depth. Does that make sense? Obviously,
No,
it doesn't to you.
it really doesn't. Like it really doesn't. Like I don't understand how you can question now them bringing in two high-level perimeter shooters in Griffin and Zeke Mayo and a guy who could put the ball on the floor and make a play to open things up as
So
well. And
this is how. So this is how,
yeah,
because only two of those guys are going to be on the floor at the same time, right? And if you have Rylan Griffin and Zeke Mayo out there, you don't have that other creator. AJ Storr is not going to be out there. And if you have all three of them on the floor together, that means one of
two of the
Dewan
three.
Harris,
Right. You're gonna have two of
AJ
the three.
Storr, Zeke Mayo,
Right.
and Rylan Griffin, right? I would assume Zeke Mayo starts, and I would assume that AJ Storr starts, right? And
No, I think Griffin. I bet Griffin starts and Mayo comes off the bench.
you
Is my
think Griffin?
guess.
Yeah. So
But
um,
whatever.
you're still running into a situation where I don't think that you're guaranteed to have the floor spacing you need. Now, all that said, I think that the combination of Hunter being able to pull big guys away from the basket, Dewan Harris being enough of a threat that he makes you close out on him, and KJ Adams playing as the as the short roll creator and all of the stuff that he does and his ability, like he really added that little like 8 foot floater that he never misses. I don't know what he actually shoots on it, but in the time that I'm watching, he shoots a 100% on that little like 8 foot jump float push shot that he has. So I think that that probably does enough, but I don't think that this is like, I, I would say that
Way better.
I,
Way better.
it should be better, but I'm
Way
not
better.
looking at it and saying that this will be better. It's not to me like Alabama going out and getting Cliff Amore to plug the hole that they had at the 5 spot. I think that he did a good
Here's
job. I do think that I don't think that it's a certainty that we're at that point.
so
That's
here
why I have
here's
Alabama number 1 and
here's
Kansas number 2. Like they're going to be awesome. Okay. I have them number 2 in America, Kansas fans. You don't need to yell at me.
here's the thing. If you double Hunter this year, he'll make you pay because he'll be able to pass out of that double to shooters. Last year, he was passing out of a double to Kevin McCullough, who, yes, he made shots for the first, like 8 games of the year? It was literally the first 8 games, and we were like, oh my God, Kevin McCullough can shoot. And I don't know if you remember me, but I said it over and over. I'm like, I want to see this. I've seen this for 3 years, and I love McCullough, but like, I don't think he's a shooter. Now you are filling that void with a pure shooter, whether it's Rylan Griffin or Zeke Mayo. So again, when you go to double Hunter Dickinson, he's got options now. He can throw it to one of those guys in the wing, or he can give it to AJ Storr, who can make you pay because he can make a play off the bounce. Let's face it, McCullough was a non-factor partially because of the injury last year down the stretch, and partially because, again, he couldn't make a shot. Whether that was due to the injury or not, we don't know. Johnny Furphy was a factor for like 8 games. Really. I mean, let's be honest here. He had like a good 8-game stretch. And other than that, Johnny Furphy was ineffective. You know, he was figuring it out early in his freshman year and then kind of hit a wall and was ineffective. I don't, and again, like you said, they have depth. They can come off the bench with bigs now. Flory Badinga is a monster if he plays the way that I think we all fell in love watching him play, right? Like he long arms. He's only probably 6'7.5", 6'8", but he's got long arms. He plays with a high motor. He rebounds. He runs. He blocks. He's perfect backing up Hunter. Zach Clemens should have come out of his right shirt last year. Didn't, but he can give him something up front too. They can go 9, 10 deep. You got the kid Passmore that I know they really like right now. That is probably a bigger and probably better version of Marco Jackson. So I don't think that's going to be a factor at all. I like this team a lot because again, they don't have the major question marks that you did last year.
Yeah. So I mean, we can get into the X factor here. To me, the X factor is the obvious part of the team. It's the impact that those 3 transfers will have, right? And Zeke Mayo moving up a level, Rylan Griffin, we'll see what he turns into, and then AJ Storr, like, is he going to be a guy that can make shots? Is he just a creator? The other question I have with AJ Storr is he? How does he fit as what will kind of be a complementary piece, right? Part of the reason he left St. John's to go to Wisconsin is to be the guy. And he was the guy at Wisconsin. And the bottom fell out at the end of the season when he was the guy at Wisconsin. So what's going to happen when he's at Kansas and it's like, all right, look, DeJuan Harris is the leader of this team. KJ Adams is the leader of this team. Hunter Dickinson is our guy. And you're kind of like, I don't know. He's the scorer. He's in the wing. He's got a starting spot. But what is his role on the team? I just wonder how that fit is going to end up working. So to me, it's how those transfers fit in, how the impact they have. Are they going to be the shot makers? Does that translate up for Zeke Mayo? I think those 3 are the difference between Kansas being really good and Kansas being like, oh shit, like, okay, yeah, Bill Self got himself a team again. Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
Here's the other thing. Last year, we were like imploring DeJuan Harris to shoot the ball from 3 because they needed it desperately. This year, they're not going to need it. It's when he's wide open and the ball finds him, he can take 3 a game. And there's no pressure on him. I think KJ Adams, you're going to see him step out a little bit more, to like 15, 18 and be able to make that shot. And Hunter was terrible shooting the ball in the second half of the year. Remember, really good at Michigan 2 years ago from 3, really good for the first probably 10 games of the year last year from 3. And then part of the problem is, again, like, he had nobody helping him out last year, really, after the first half of the year. It was so much on him because McCullough wasn't the same player, and Adams and DeJuan Harris kind of had to do more than really what they're capable of doing offensively.
Yeah. The Flory Badinga thing is going to be interesting to me because I'm curious to see if he'll be playing minutes with KJ Adams. I feel like their skill sets kind of overlap quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think you could play them together that much.
Yeah. I think it's something where, like, he's the backup 4 and you'll see him minutes with Hunter Dickinson and minutes with Zach Clemens, right? I think that's kind of
you play a few minutes maybe with KJ if KJ shows he can make mid-range jumpers. If he can't, you can't play those two together because Flory is still more of a energy, toughness, shot blocking, rebounding fool. Like he just gets after it.
Yeah. I also think that the addition of Shaquille Moore is probably a little bit more relevant than we're going to give it credit for. Like that is
Good piece.
yeah,
Yeah.
and look, the one of the issues they kind of had last season was what happens if DeJuan Harris has to go to the bench, right? Like what happens if he can't play 4 minutes? What happens if he gets 3 fouls in the first half? And having a veteran point guard that is a shot creator that is 23 years old, a fifth-year guy that's played in NCAA tournaments, I think is something that will certainly help them. Overall, the expectation for this group, like it kind of is Big 12 title or bust. It kind of is Final Four or bust. It kind of is like this team should be competing for national championships, which is just it's such a high level of pressure to deal with when you are a basketball program.
Yeah, but fair when you're Kansas and you reload like this
Mm-hmm.
and you've got enough NIL and you return, you know, arguably one of the top 5 players at the 1, the 4, and the 5. You make a case. I mean, KJ, I'm not sure he's one of the top 5, but with experience, with how hard he plays, with all the intangibles, like let's face it, like yes, KJ can't really shoot, but like everybody loves KJ Adams because he does everything right for this team. And again, I just think when you start with those 3 that have that much experience, think how many games those 3 have played.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Or
DeJuan
shooters
Harris was
around.
the starting point guard for a national championship winning team, right? Hunter Dickinson is in year 5 of being one of the faces of the sport. Like he was an All American coming back as a sophomore, and that was in what, like 2020. So it's and look, the one of the issues they ran into last year was KJ Adams kind of turned into one of their offensive outlets, like one of their go-to guys, and that was kind
They
of the
had to.
problem. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was one of the problems that they had. So I do think that getting him back to being a guy that can play a role and just do his job. You said I don't know if he's a top 5 4 man in America. I think he absolutely is, and I think he's probably the best player in America at the job that he's going to be asked to do
Right.
when it comes to being athletic, get some offensive rebounds, crash the glass, be switchable defensively, bring the energy, be a passer out of short roll actions, and just go out there and accept your role and do your job. And that's really all he needs to be able to do, you know?
That's what I'm saying. So we know Hunter's one of the top 5 bigs. DeJuan Harris is one of the top 5 overall point guards, even though he's not much of a threat offensively at times. So when you start with that, and oh, by the way, all 3 have a ton of experience, don't you just need to fill them in with the right role guys around them? And I think they did that with the 3 additions through the portal: 2 shooters, 1 scorer, shot creator, guy who can put on the deck. Like I don't know what more you need. I honestly I don't know how many drinks you had today, but I don't know what more you need for this Kansas team to feel good that they're, to me, you know, like you said, 1A, 1B. I don't care what you want to do, Alabama or them, but you're nitpicking here. You're in a mood today. You're in a mood today.
I literally said I'm going to be nitpicking because we're talking about the number 1B team in America. So let's talk about what could go wrong for them. That's literally what I said. And you're like, how can you believe this? Well, this is what could end up going wrong. So let me ask you this. How does this get derailed for Kansas, right? If it doesn't go well, what happens?
I mean, injuries is the only way for
Okay,
me, and
that's
they've
a
and
that's a cop out.
they've got depth. Like obviously, you know, they can't withstand injury to like DeJuan Harris, right? Like he's probably their most important player. Because even with Hunter like gone, which would hurt him, but you could put Flory and Clements in and be fine. Maybe not to win a national title or get to a Final Four, but you'll still win a lot of games. DeJuan Harris is their most important player because again, he just runs the team, sets the table, keeps everybody happy, defends at a high level. But yeah, I don't know what can derail him because I don't see a Nick Timberlake out of either Rylan Griffin or Zeke Mayo. I think one of them is going to shoot the hell out of it, and the other is still going to be a pretty good shooter coming off the bench.
Yeah, because we've seen Griffin do it at the high major level. Like he played on the Final Four team, averaged double figures and made threes. So, um, no, I hear you. There's a reason why they're preseason top 2 team in America, and a lot of people won't have them um, at number 2. The Big 12, with how good it is, like, are they the surefire favorites? Like, what happens if they don't win the Big 12 regular season title this year? Is that catastrophic? Because the way that we're talking about them is this should be the best team in that conference, right? But also, by the way, Iowa State might be a preseason top 5 team. Baylor might be a preseason top 5 team. Arizona coming in is probably a preseason top 10 to 12 team. Who did I miss? I missed some. Houston is, it might be a preseason top 5 team. So like that conference is loaded at the top.
Loaded. No, you're right. And that's why, yes, they're the favorite, but not by much. They're the favorite because, again, they bring back these 3 dudes who we know about and we've seen forever, and they addressed their concerns. They addressed them where, again, a year ago, they just didn't do a good job in the portal. They just didn't a year ago. And, again, part of it was, Arterio Morris obviously getting kicked off the team. But I felt like even if they had Arterio Morris last year, the pieces still didn't fit because, like, Arterio Morris and Elmarco, neither are great shooters. And Timberlake, yes, we all thought he'd be better than he was, but you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket from a kid from Towson.
Yeah, well, look, the biggest difference between what they have this year and what they had last year was the 3 pieces that they brought in: Nick Timberlake, Elmarco Jackson, and Nick Timberlake or Marco. The pieces they brought on perimeter were not as good as the pieces that they're bringing in, or not as veteran as the pieces that they're bringing in on the perimeter this year, right? Like Zeke Mayo may be the same issue as Nick Timberlake. Like it may be something where he gets to the high major level and he's not quite good enough, right? Rylan Griffin may be the same issue. Johnny Furphy is the other one. Rylan Griffin coming in. We've seen him do it already. He's been there for 2 years. Johnny Furphy was fine for like a month and people kind of figured him out. Well, like Rylan Griffin's already figured it out. We've already seen him do it for 2 seasons and make a Final Four out of it. Marco Jackson and AJ Storr, right? Like AJ Storr averaged 16 points a game in the Big Ten last year. Marco Jackson was a freshman. Like there's a reason why freshmen are freshmen. So the one thing that gives me confidence is that the process of putting together the roster in terms of the skill set that they want is not all that different from last year, which leads me to believe that, like Bill Self is saying, the thought process we had was probably the correct way to put together this team. What we need to do is go out and get veterans instead of bringing in freshmen and hoping that this up transfer is going to work. They brought in another up transfer, but the 2 players they brought in are 2 guys that have spent 2 years at the high major level. And to me, that says a lot about how this team is built. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are you going to give him a C for a grade? What are you going to give him?
No, I give them an A. The only reason they're not getting an A+ is because of the Elmarco Jackson injury and the fact that I'm still a little bit worried about the depth. I think there's still some questions, but they're a flat out A. Like I don't, what could you have really done that would have been better?
No, they're getting an A for me. I mean, again, A+. Like it's hard to get an A+. I mean, I don't even know what it's like to get an A+. I wasn't close back in college, but I'm not giving him an A+. I'll give him an A because I still, like you said, I want to see it to believe it, but I think they did everything they needed to do on paper and even with guys that have proven it, 2 of which at the high major level in AJ Storr, in Rylan Griffin and Zeke Mayo. Listen, I mean, the dude has been consistent. 3 years, he's been consistent shooting, 30, what did he shoot? 39 last year from 3, 37 as a sophomore, and 42% from 3 as a freshman. So Timberlake, if you remember, he struggled shooting the beginning of his career, had 2 really good years before he went to Kansas, but was a little bit erratic. Zeke Mayo has been super consistent shooting the ball. And he's a Lawrence, Kansas kid who's going to love just the opportunity after playing South Dakota State for 3 years to play for his hometown.
And I do think that he is a little bit of a different player in the sense that Timberlake was strictly off the ball. Like Zeke Mayo is a little bit more of an on the ball, like a combo, as opposed to like a straight up two guard. So I'm a little bit less worried about that. And just for context, um, there have been 2 A+ that have been given out so far this year. One of them was to Alabama, and one of them was to UConn. And the reason why those got A+ was because in addition to building out those rosters, they also turned down overtures from other programs and organizations for their head coaches. So that's kind of what it takes to get an A+ is you got to be able to get, to have your coach say no to everybody else and also have a perfect offseason. And I guess the way that I would phrase it is I don't think that this was necessarily
Well,
a
what if
perfect
Bill Self
offseason.
said no? What if he said no to Oklahoma State? Maybe he did that. I think
I'm
he
sure that
did.
Bill Self said no to a lot of stuff this offseason. I just don't think that it was anything where he actually had a chance to end up going. Listen, the way that I would kind of sum this up best when it comes to Kansas is that they put themselves in a position where they're going to be the favorite to win the Big 12. They're going to be the favorite to win the national title, and they have a roster that is good enough to be able to accomplish all that, and a coach that is the last guy not named Dan Hurley to cut down nets on the last night of the college basketball season. I fully expect Kansas to be in the mix for that all season long, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this team grow and develop. Jeff, we have 45 of these coming out, 45 episodes of off-season grades. We're going to hit on we're going to try to get all of the top 45 teams in America, or at least the 45 most interesting teams in America here in the mix. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Keep it locked on the Field of 68. For the next 9 weeks, we will be rolling out all of this content.